Hello. I think that functions and calculated fields within queries are so powerful. I want to show you one more example, and I'm going to show it using numbers. We did a calculated field in the last video on first and last name, which are text fields, but you can, of course, use them on all kinds of fields, including dates and numbers, etc. And what I want to show is something with the service events table. So you notice in here, I have two columns back here which are currency fields. One is the total funds that are desired by the organization and then the actual total funds raised. And I want to point out something else here too. I say funds needed, which I think is a confusing term. I think this is this is the goal of funds that the organization would like to raise, and I think it's confusing. You can actually rename fields, and typically you will not have problems doing that, and I want to show how that works. So if I go in here, and the name of the field is funds needed, I think a better name for that is either funds desired or the funds goal or something like that. I'm gonna rename it to funds goal. And you notice I click off of it and save it and go to datasheet view. It's now the funds goal versus the funds raised. And the nice thing in Access is that this is actually going to be reflected in other objects. We don't have to go back and change those objects. So for instance, I know I used that field, which we now call funds goal. I know I used it in this query. Let's just run it. And you'll see here, this query that found events prior to 2013, the field now says funds goal. It's been renamed automatically. And it was part of all the objects, but you can see it shows up here in the table. So that is a nice feature in Access. So a new query I want to build in here is looking at the funds goal. And let's assume that next year these organizations wanted to raise their goal by 10% so that their new goal would be what they had this year, but then also add 10%. It's easy to do that with a query. Let's do that. Go to create, and so we're going to work with the funds goal. Let's bring it down. So we can type in here that we want 10%, and 10% really means 0.10. We can put in 0.10 or 1, and it's actually built a calculated expression. And let's just bring down the regular funds goal so we can compare it. So we've got our regular goal for this year. Now we've got our new goal times, and actually I have that wrong, it should be 0.10. Or it comes out 0.1, 0.10, the same thing. When I run it, you can see it here, a couple things that look wrong with it and we'll need to correct. It's actually calculated 10%, so 10% of 1,000 is 100, 10% of 1,300 is 130, but that's not what we want, and also it's not displaying it as currency. So we can go back and correct that. And if we go on here, if we highlight it, and I did a right mouse click there to see all these, I can look at the properties, and it's the property of this particular calculated field. And what I can do is say I want currency. Let's close that out, run it. And it's now currency, but it's still wrong. My goal really is the current goal plus 10%. Let's go back. And an easy way to fix this, instead of saying we want 10% of the funds goal, we really want 110%. So we would put 1.1 times the funds goal. And also let's rename the header of it. Let's say next year funds goal, like that. Run it. And there we've got 110%, the current goal plus 10%. So that is just showing you, again, another way you can use a calculated field and functions in here to do lots of interesting things with your data.